Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GFD TV, and we are continuing our monthly series on wealth building strategies. It is our objective, it is our goal, it is our mission. The Bible says that He desires that we prosper and be in health, even as our soul prospers. And it is important that we get wisdom and strategies in order to build wealth effectively and understand the system of wealth in the world and how it works and how we can be efficient and effective as we build wealth and generational wealth, because the Bible also says that one generation, we want to leave that generational to 1,000 generations. So we are leaving that generational wealth. How we do that is really a mission of God, but we also have to develop the wisdom and understanding to know how the system works. So today I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing to some, none other than a very good friend of mine. He has been a friend for, going on over 10 years, all around there, somewhere on there.
Isn't that amazing? It seems like yesterday.
It just seems like yesterday. And he is truly, truly a gifted and talented individual. Graduated as valedictorian of his class right here in Atlanta. He is a graduate with a double major from Duke University in engineering and
computer science.
Computer science. I knew I was missing something. All right. A really, really smart guy. When you talk about knowing numbers, knowing how to navigate the financial space, established himself, has made millions, lost millions, and is truly learning and has taught me a lot about financial strategies and learning how to build wealth in the systems that we live in. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to none other than Richard Harden.
Outstanding. Happy Monday. What we call this Money Making Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. And this, one of the cool things about what we're about to do is we get to turn around the definition of a week. You think about the average person, they say that Monday is heart attack day in America, meaning statistically speaking, the vast majority of heart attacks happen on Monday mornings as people are getting busy, rushing off to work to do jobs that they don't want to do with people that don't like them and that they don't like. Can anybody relate to that? So in my process for today will be straightforward. And Natasha said some great things about me, but let me tell you about her. I think that might be the hardest working woman in America, because I see recently now associate pastor, mother of 3 bold, brilliant, beautiful, and expensive children, real estate agent to the stars, but most importantly, really focused on improving the people that she meets in every interaction. So I'd be remiss if I jumped in and started talking about content without giving you the context of how amazing Natasha Johnson is. Now, by way of background, again, things you said about me are true. Born and raised Atlanta, Georgia, and here's what I understood. I think about what happened for me is I was taught the formula for creating success in America. They say at school, good grades, college, good job, happily ever after. And I thought that meant that that was the formula for wealth. I was sadly mistaken. Put this in your notes if you're taking notes. Work is not designed to create wealth. Is designed to create work. So labor is still the highest tax form of income in America. And in doing the things that they said to do, I went to school, I got good grades, got out the top of my class, I learned everything the Atlanta public school system intended to teach me. And I went off to Duke University with sky high expectations. How many of you can relate to wanting to be wealthy? My grandmama had those glass doorknobs where I pretend like we were turning diamonds to go from one room into the other room. Or is that just me? And the funny thing in the process was, as my education continued, I went off to Duke University with the dream of making $1 million a year. Went through that first year of classes with chemistry, physics, calculus, university writing course, computer science, and I started looking around saying, you know what? $100,000 a year might not be that bad. By the time I got to my junior year, I started looking around, seeing people that were entering the job market. I gave him 40, maybe they'll give me 40. And by the time I got through 4 years of college, I was looking around, hoping, wishing, praying, Lord God, just somebody give me a job paying me something. And as that process continued, I looked around at the people around me and found out I wasn't the only one that didn't get the education I needed to create what I wanted. What did I want to create? I wanted to be wealthy. And for definition's sake, I'm not talking about, matter of fact, let's be clear about that. Wealth. Make sure you have something to write with, because I'm going to go through some numbers. You're going to need some things to write down, the things that we go through today. But wealth, in my definition that I've adopted from my studies of Robert Kiyosaki, the definition of wealth isn't about an amount of money, isn't about an amount of time. And it's having enough assets to pay for your lifestyle without having to work a day in your life again. Once you get to that place, you're wealthy, and you may not be a millionaire depending on how you're living right now. Now, are there levels to wealth? Can you have more and more assets and do more and more things? Absolutely, but we got to always put money in perspective. And so even though I'm going to have a money conversation, I'm going to put it in the perspective of history of what we just got through celebrating. Because how many of you just saw everything that happened with the celebration of Juneteenth? Did you see it?
I didn't, not yet.
So no. Here's the irony. And this is something that I shared with a small group of people on Saturday as things were going on, is we have to be careful in America, especially people of our persuasion, because sometimes if you give us a reason to celebrate, we forget what we were fighting for. So for background purposes, let me at least say and share what Juneteenth is about, because it's, on the one hand, it's an important holiday, but at the same time, it's a very ironic holiday in that June 19th, 1865 was the last day, the day that the final slaves found out that they were free, according to the Emancipation Proclamation. Challenge is, Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1st of 1863, and you have for another 2 years people continuing in a state of chattel slavery, thinking they were slaves, not knowing that they were free. And even after that happened, just put in perspective how long we as African Americans have been here in the United States, and think about that timeline. And you think about from the 1500s through to 1865, one of the reasons that America is the richest country in the world is they have 400 years of free labor. They have free land, so they got some real estate and free labor. And then the next 100 years, again, for people of my descent, African American heritage, another 100 years where rights to education, voting, all of those things were suppressed considerably. And it's only been this last 50, 75 years or so where things have been relatively equal. But saying that they're equal, when it comes to the wealth gap in America, by the way, there's a show out. If you look it up, it's called The Wealth Gap. And it says that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is still growing in America today. And it's still like they used to say in the old times, them that's got shall have, them that's not shall lose. A lot of people are losing because of the things that we didn't learn in our traditional American education. And it hadn't been an easy road. So if you're looking at the timeline, anybody play the game Monopoly?
I did.
So they talked about just this game board of, if you started off Black in America compared to people that are out there, it's easy to get frustrated by the things that we don't have and the wealth gap that already exists and perpetuates, so that we know that, if you start off with free land and free labor, and you get to take extra turns before we even get on the board, there's no guess that the struggle still continues. Even now, we got to run faster just to catch up. And there is a different struggle now. I admit, I say right now, we live in the land of opportunity. Just a lot of us aren't trained to become opportunists and to think of the struggle in these three areas: psychological, getting rid of the shackles and the mind breaks and blocks that we have around creating wealth and working together cooperatively. Education, point number 2. So many of us are still caught up in the idea of an outdated formal education, where many of us need to make sure that we develop a specialized financial education. Put that in your notes. There's several disciplines that we need to learn in terms of money so that the financial gains, the things that we need to help our children create that wealth. Because they say a good man leaves a legacy for his children and his children's children. There are things that we have to learn, that we have to do, and that we have to teach if we're ever going to break the cycle of generational lack. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So putting that in perspective, why does that matter? Because when we talk about the race gap, I'm looking at the faces on here. Does everybody have a skin tone similar to mine? Let's see. I can't see y'all's faces. Your phones are my color. I'll say that.
Somewhere close.
But if you think about this process, here's what happened. I went to Frederick Douglass High School in Atlanta, Georgia, and our school motto, Frederick Douglass said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. But if you know the struggle, you can know how to make progress. And thinking about the wealth gap by age and gender, every comparison that's out there is, puts a vast disparity, almost 10 times the net worth of the average American white family versus Hispanic and Black families. My mission, very simple. I want to close the gap for people that look like me. I want to find enough people around me that think like me, talk like me, that are integrating the things and the processes of wealth into their habits and their disciplines so that we can get wealthy together. So today I'm going to talk about one thing in particular, and then we'll see what kind of time there is, what kind of questions there are. Is that okay, Natasha?
Yes.
So from the book of Proverbs, anybody want to read today's scripture?
If no one volunteers, I'll read it. The rich reign over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender.
Borrow is slave to the lender. So if you're taking notes, my topic for today is the banker's secret. Number one lenders in America obviously are lenders. And I think one of the things that we have to discipline into our study of the idea of STEM, because it's funny, we talk about science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM. We got to make sure that we emphasize money math, because I think about all the math classes that I took in my coursework through high school and through 2 technical degrees. I had almost enough math classes to get a 3rd major in mathematics, but not one class on personal finance, credit management, wealth accumulation. Did anybody else find those things lacking in your curriculum? If so, say I. Put your thumbs up if you're on a device. Just want to make sure it's the same people.
I did. Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today. I'm not a financial advisor. I am a financial educator. But as I learn concepts that have a significant impact on us, to the good or to the bad, we've got to put ourselves in a position where we create wealth. So first step, we're going to talk about getting our financial house in order. If you're taking notes, put that in your notes. Getting your financial house in order. There's a proven path to create wealth. And the challenge is many of us find ourselves all over the place. I know for me personally, I remember that day back in 1995 when I realized I was off track for what I wanted. Meaning I was getting paid more money than I'd ever made and than most people in my family made. But at the same time, I was still check to check. It's like the more you make, the more they take. Yeah. And I started trying to figure out how to invest. I had some credit card debts that just snuck up on us out of nowhere. I had that frustration where there were so many things that I wanted for my kids, but I was always in that place where, daddy doesn't have time for that. Daddy doesn't have money for that. And I needed a path to get me to the place where I could do things in a certain order. So if you're ready, say I'm ready. Let's build the house of our finances toward wealth, knowing that there are individual steps that you make along the way. Put this in your notes. There's not one wealthy person that woke up wealthy if they weren't born that way. It's a process to start from where you are to getting to where you want to go. If the goal is to have wealth, meaning enough money coming from your assets to never work a day in your life again, if you choose to. But it starts with the foundation. So step 1, foundation. You got to get your mind right. You got to get to the place where you expect to live in an attitude of abundance. I have more than enough. I'm a money magnet. Money comes to me easily, readily, daily from north, south, east, and west. And you have to start a curriculum for yourself. Send me a text message after this is over. Get in touch with me so that we can continue the learning process together. But here's what I want people to understand. That foundation of what's in our mind is where wealth is actually created. Money comes first to our brains before it ever reaches our accounts. Second, as we educate. Third, you got to have a game plan. And once you have a game plan, you have to run the play. And third, what I think is the most important thing, but what many of us are taught not to have, is a team of people running the same direction we are. I think one of the most brilliant things about having a wealth ministry is you get enough of the right money in the right hands, and we get to change the conversation when it comes to what we can do for social and economic change. Yes?
Yes.
Now, the second thing is you got to have a written budget. Now, I believe, did y'all have Tia Glenn talking about budgets last time?
Yes.
Yeah.
So simple concept, by the way. I know, I started off doing my budget backwards. I will be honest admission. I did my budget backward initially, meaning I budgeted for how much I had and how much I could pay versus being able to proactively put this in your notes. But budget is a way for you to tell your money where to go so you don't have to wonder where it went. And one of the things I suggest as a baseline, at least if you're, of the same faith as me, 80-10-10 is a minimum, meaning budget your life in such a way that you're able to live on 80% or less of your take-home pay. That leaves 10% for tithing and 10% for your growth and expansion fund. We'll talk about the transition and where that 10% gets applied based on what step you're on in the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But it's two things. It must be written and must be followed. No good writing down a theoretical budget and then not having it impact the way that checks get written. Second step, build up your mini emergency fund, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 in a cash equivalent. I mean, let's just call it in the bank. Could have it in a money market account, don't have it in a CD. Mini emergency fund is because the reality is, as soon as you get on the path to wealth, put this in your notes, you will be under attack. You know that, right?
Yes.
I mean, has anybody ever gotten out there like, you know what? I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna get my money right. And as soon as you start getting your money right, the air conditioner goes out and you blow a top.
Yeah. That's the truth.
So that $1,000 to $3,000 that you just set aside is specifically for emergencies because they're going to happen. And when you have the money, it's not a problem, but it's critical to our wealth plans because here's what would happen for me. A mini emergency would come up, a tire, an air conditioning, a sudden school bill, or Christmas. And that would end up on the credit card. And credit is the path to debt, and debt is the path to poverty. So we got to get to the place where the next thing that we do is get out of debt. Now, I'm specifically going to spend most of my time today talking about the importance of getting on the right side of the compound interest superpower. Meaning, think about it this way. Has anybody ever run a bath before?
Rob the what? What'd you say?
Anybody ever run a bath before?
Oh, yes.
So if you turn the water on full blast, but you don't have a stopper in the tub, how long does it take for the tub to fill up?
It never fills up.
It never fills up. It can never reach overflow. But as soon as you put a stopper, as soon as you stop the things that are draining your accounts, that's when you have room for what you have to have more accumulate on top of it. And we're going to talk about specifically why this is an important first step ahead of your true emergency fund and even investing for long term. If I had it to do over again, imagine this is a picture in my life. Let me look at y'all in your eyeballs so that you can see what I'm saying here. There was a time I looked in my life where I decided I wanted to get into real estate investment. Yes?
Yes.
Wanted to buy my first rental property. So I put together a plan to start saving up money, a couple of $100, a couple of checks at a time, $10,000 I was going to put in the credit union. I didn't have a checkbook or a debit card for that account. So it's a good place for money to be put away to the side.
Mhm.
At the same time, we had a credit card that had a $25,000 limit and a $22,000 balance, right? I was paying them the minimum plus $50 every 30 days, right? I mean, in my mind, I was young. I didn't know. I thought that if I paid more than the minimum, I would pay it off sooner. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Third, I was putting 10% into my 401k.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of the term spitting into the wind?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Meaning fundamentally, there was no amount of money that I could make in my 401k that would offset the amount of money that I was losing to Discover Card, especially having money sitting in the bank. Sometimes you just got to be intelligent about the power of compound interest. I call this the banker secret. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Now, Albert Einstein, how many of you know what he's famous for?
The invention of the light bulb.
So Albert Einstein, he gets you E equals MC squared. Is one of the, so the ability to convert matter into energy.
Mhm.
And most of your discoveries around the atomic era, he's credited as being one of the smartest men in history, but he said the strongest force on earth is compound interest. Now, by the way, for those of you that have a completion gap, I know I'm about to jump topics. Let me at least let you know what the next 2 steps are in my getting your financial house in order. I do have a lesson for each of these, by the way. So over time, when I come back to you, let me know which of these areas you want to focus on, and we can jump into that lesson. But before you start investing for long-term, build a true emergency fund. Now, what is a true emergency fund? That's the emergency fund that you have set aside in case you have to leave your job or your job decides to leave you. Depending on how you earn money, you need 3 to 6 months of your expenses in a place that's cash that you don't have to touch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, the reason I say these 2 things, there's a protective, they say that most millionaires are made on defense before offense, meaning first you got to protect yourself against what could happen. And for most people in America, there's a job change coming every 4 to 7 years. So might as well be prepared to be able to weather that storm without having to tap into your long-term investments, which is money and seeds that are legitimately planted for a later season. But here's what'll happen. If you get to a place where your finances and things are going well and you run into an income situation, you might be tempted to hit that credit card, or even worse, have to tap into that long-term investment, and that sacrifices the seed in this month. You eat the harvest, not the seeds. Make sense? And then the last thing is just once you get to the place where you've got enough that you've invested in, that the income from your assets is the outcome, meaning you can live comfortably off what your money's making you, then you're financially free. Write that in your notes. Financially free is the new free. And then that next step above is, it's amazing what happens once we get outside the rat race and can see clearly to our path to making wise investments with the right group of people. That's getting your financial house in order. Hopefully that was 5 or 10 minutes. Is that right? Okay, we're good shape. All right, so today's lesson. Now, this is the part where you're gonna have to write and you're gonna have to do math, and I need participants with voices. I need at least 3 people to count money with me. Now, I'm gonna give you, these 3 people will get a gift. 3 gifts, in fact.
Do I get to be one of them?
You do. So we got Natasha as 1. Who else?
I'll be 1.
Okay, Latrice, thank you for playing.
That was Veronica.
I'll be 1 too, though.
Okay, so Latrice, Veronica, Natasha.
I'll be 1 too, though.
All right. So each of you, I'm going to give you a gift. So number 1, surprise, happy birthday. It's your birthday. You're 29 years old. So you got the gift of youth, right? Surprise number 2, give you $10,000 cash. Surprise number 3, that cash has to be in an investment that you don't touch, but you're guaranteed an interest rate. But here's what the banker secret is. So if you think about both getting out of debt, the reason the interest rates matter, the reason your credit score matters, is because of how banks make their money. Does everybody know how banks make their money?
using your money.
They use our money. It's a process. It's a legal process for them called arbitrage, meaning for every dollar that we deposit at the bank, they can loan $12. Now, the secret is they make their money on the margin. They are able to make money without having to pay much money. And it works in this way. So if you say to yourself, the banker's secret, we use the rule of 72. Write that down. The rule of 72 means that if you take the number 72 divided by the interest rate, that's how long it takes your money to double working at a fixed rate of interest. Now, again, compound interest is the strongest power in the universe, according to Albert Einstein. The people that understand it get paid by it. The people that don't understand it pay it. Meaning, if you've got a double digit interest rate, just as fast as these investments grow, that's also the speed that the debt grows, is running the opposite direction of us. So Natasha, we'll get you started first. You'll have a 4% interest rate. Make sense?
Yes.
Now here's a cool thing. There's not a bank account in America giving a 4% return on savings, is there?
No, there is not.
Not in any way. I think right now the top rate, I'll go back to the Google search I did later. I think the highest interest rate any bank is paying on savings, even online banks, is 1%. So if you think about 1%, 72 divided by 1, that money doubles every 72 years. But Natasha, in your case, 72 divided by 4, your money doubles every 18 years, right? So if we start you with your gift investment of $10,000, that means at age 29, you have $10,000. 18 years later, that doubles and you have
$20,000.
$20,000. And then 18 years after that, at age 65, you have $40,000. Now, did you do well?
Yeah, I did pretty okay. I can't live off that, but that's okay.
Right. I mean, considering you didn't add any more money to it, you just let the money do the work. And, you know, over the course of those 36 years, that money was able to double itself twice. Is not enough to live off of, but it's much better than you'd be doing in a traditional bank account. But for today, we're going to pretend that's the bank rate.
Okay.
Now, let's see. Who was our second volunteer?
Veronica.
Is that Veronica? Okay, Veronica. Yes. Now, here's the thing. This is the sneaky part about compound interest. Most people think about interest because it's a percentage and it's small as a small value, but it's a big factor over time. Veronica, we're going to give you a 6% interest rate.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean for your money? It means that your money doubles 72 divided by 6. I'll cheat for you. It doubles every 12 years. So at age 29, we start with 10,000. And then by the time you get to 41, you are at 20,000. By the time you're at 53, you're at 40,000.
80.
And then by age 65, you're at 80,000. Now here's something that I didn't expect, thinking about how exponents work. You notice that by the time you're at 53, you've matched Natasha's interest rate with only 2 more percentage points in terms of return on investment, yes?
Correct.
And over that same earning period, the same money earned you twice as much money, not just 2% more.
Correct.
Now here's what's powerful. Who was my third volunteer?
Latrice.
Latrice, we're going to invert our formula and we'll give you a 12% interest rate.
I feel like I should have gone last.
Now think about this. 12% interest means that the money that you have working doubles every 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now the reality is there's not a bank in America that's paying 12% consistently on a fixed interest product, correct?
Right.
But how many of you know that there are plenty of banks making that kind of money?
Sure enough.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a low interest rate for a credit card, right? But
Yeah.
think about this. You start, Latrice, at 10,000, age 29. By the time you're 35, you're at 20,000. And by the time you're 41, you're at what?
40,
40,000. Then by the time you're 47, you're at
80,
80,000. Then at 53, you're at
160,
boom. By 59,
320,
32.
and then by age 65, that same $10,000 gets you to $640,000
Mm.
off a
Wow.
$10,000 initial investment with an aggressive return. Now, here's the banker's secret. The bank makes 12% or more. How many of you have some debt in your life where the percentage of interest is higher than 12%?
of course.
That's just real. That's how they've set up the system.
Right.
But at the same time, how many of you have a return that's less than the 4%? So even if we were getting the 4%, like Natasha in this example, just having our money in a traditional bank is a $600,000 decision. Meaning we loan the bank our money 10 times, right? Over the course of this lifetime, 10 times the bank gets to loan out that same money. They earn $600,000 more using this rule. Now, people said, now, but Richard, now I'm just mad at the bank. You should be.
For real.
You should be. And it's in one of those ways, just that we start to think differently about our money and our treatment of the things that influence money. So what can we do now that we know the banker's secret? Number one thing that we can do to decrease how much money we pay in interest is to get our credit scores as high as possible. Credit is important. Remind me when I come back to teach a lesson on how to keep your credit high. Number two thing we can do is get out of debt. And the number three thing that we can do is get ourselves into earnings vehicles there, because there are vehicles available to us that earn 12, 14, 43%. It's just not going to be a retail product at the bank that's building the biggest building in your city. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, as I mentioned that, part of the process of building a team, in my opinion, is having a team of experts to help with the process. Natasha and I have partnered in a financial empowerment and education movement where we teach things like this. We teach the banker's secret. We'll talk about retail credit and amortized debt. We'll talk about the process of how to build a wealth budget so that as your investments grow, you have different vehicles. And then we talk about things like private banking, where you can be your own bank. Imagine this, Natasha. This year, I started my private reserve account, which is my own bank, but I still have money in the bank that's down the street. I don't advertise for them anymore, but they chase people around. Same balance in each account. One account, I got 29 cents on a 5-figure balance. The other account, $140 in the same period. It's 1,000% difference in my private reserve account, which is my bank, versus the bank down the street. Make sure just let us know about the financial fitness challenge and things coming up. But as we go through that process, we do have experts that help with things like getting your credit score up. So I know for many years, I was right around that 600 range, thinking I was a good person, but not having tactical advice on what I could do. I started working with the experts. It got me up to an 810 so far, but with a game plan to get to an 848. By the way, for those of you that don't track credit scores that closely, 850 is perfect. See, there was a time I thought dark-skinned people couldn't get good credit scores, but now it's just, it's in my ongoing joy. But then at the same time, we walked through a process of how to automate a debt snowball. Now, here's my honest confession of my life. I did not know my creditors' plan for me. I knew that I was paying the bills. As a matter of fact, once I started making more than check to check, I would spread out $100 across everybody that I owed money to pay it off faster. Hey, sometimes you just need perspective. Imagine this. If I stayed on my creditor's plan, I'd be in debt for another 24 years. Working with our team, they put together a plan for me that initially would have me out of debt in 7 years and 7 months. Now, thanks to being aggressive about the plan, I will be debt-free in 5.5 years from now. And then the best thing is that saves me over the course of time, instead of $440,000 in interest, $170,000 in interest. That's $276,000, but more importantly, 16 years, 16 of my earning years that I'll have back. And then they actually give a roadmap for taking the same money once we hit debt free and investing it 14 years from now. That'll be a new million based on what I was using to pay the bills before. Make sense? I didn't make it up. I'm not bragging about what I did. I'm saying I got a team of people that does this all day, every day, so that when we get together to talk about plans and game plans, we put ourselves in a position where if we're going to create wealth and financial freedom, we got to do four things. We got to get our taxes down, get our debts down, get our interest down, and our expenses down. And you know the remarkable thing about doing those four things? Stress goes down. And at the same time, if we get our cash flow up, cash flow is king. We'll teach a cash flow class another day. Income, your credit scores, and your investments up, the overall visibility, the mindset of abundance just shows up in your life, and you start finding yourself in the room for opportunity. Because that's what they say. They say that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Yes?
Absolutely.
So that is about my time. Let me just recap our steps. So this time, say them with me so I know you got them. So the first step that we got to do, we got to build our foundation, got to get our mindset, education, game plan, and team. Everybody say foundation.
Foundation.
Second step, we need a written budget.
A written budget.
Written budget. You've got to arrange your finances in such a way that you're living on 80% or less of your take-home income so that you can honor your obligations to God, but also your obligations to your future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The worst investment or saving strategy I ever had was I'm going to save what's left. You know what used to be left in my house, Willie?
Nothing.
What's that?
Nothing. Another bill that was behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that.
Next step, we go for our mini emergency fund. Make sure as quickly as possible you put together $1,000 to $3,000 towards your wealth plan as a buffer between you and the attack that's coming. Because I swear to you, as soon as you say, I want to be wealthy, start walking into it, there's somebody out there waiting to attack you in your vehicle, your home, or your relationship. You need $1,000 to $3,000 to take care of many emergencies. That's MINI, small emergencies, not a lot of emergencies. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Next step is
Get out of debt.
get out of debt, snowball that thing. We'll talk about a process for automating it so that it's not emotional. But if you get to the place where we're able to take the two biggest expenses in our home, our taxes and our interest payments, and apply that, that's what's think about it this way. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. But we get those things out of the way, that frees up our cash flow so that we can get that true emergency fund. What's a true emergency fund?
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months of your living expenses. And it's for the case that if for any reason you leave your job or your job leaves you, you're not in a place where you got to break into the investment or go back into debt to maintain your lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Next, invest with this posture. Income is the outcome. How much money will the things that I'm putting my money into make me, and how long will it take for the total of those things to be more than my monthly expenses? Now, but by the way, what does that mean? Do I believe in 401ks? Yes. What else do I believe in? I believe in real estate. I like houses. You know why I like houses?
Why?
They appreciate value.
2/3 of America's wealth is in real estate.
Come on now, say that again.
And when it comes down to it, right now, those houses that we put money into, especially if you get into the investor quadrant when it comes to real estate, now you're in a position where you have some leverage where someone else is actually purchasing something for you that's going up in value.
That's
That
it.
makes sense? And then the last thing is putting a roof on it all is once you've got those assets, once you've got cash flow coming to you above and beyond what you need to live, that's when we start the legacy and giving process where imagine what it would be like if you could be like one of my partners. I remember Lester Weaver would always talk about wanting to be a reverse tither, where he is able to give away the 90 and live off the 10.
Wow.
That's power. And so with that, get thee out of debt, because the debtor is the slave to the lender. And last point for today, favorite quote from Harriet Tubman. She said, I have freed thousands of slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they only knew that they were slaves. So don't let Juneteenth being on the calendar be something that's another reason to kick back. Remember what we are fighting for. The struggle is still real. We got to close the gap. And if you haven't found the person that changes the legacy for your family, it's probably the person that you look at in the mirror every day. Make sure that we take some time together to get our mindsets set on building assets so that our families can be set. And don't worry if the people around you look at you like what you're doing is crazy, because 99% of the people working in America today do end up dependent on family, friends, and the federal government. It just won't be us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So with that said, are there any questions, anything I can take care of? Oh, let me put my number in the chat. Text me if you want either these slides or just a schedule of upcoming events. I am always somewhere teaching. We got an amazing conference going on here later this week, and I'm all over the place on Zoom because all I have to do is click a button and I'm in there.
Awesome. So,
Outstanding.
all right. It's open for Q&A. If you have a question you would like to ask Richard, please unmute yourself, and this is your opportunity to do so. Thank you, Richard. That was awesome.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So,
Can you put your number back real quick for me, please?
What's that? Oh,
it's still in the chat, Veronica. I'll text it to you.
Is it? Okay. No, that's fine. If it's in the chat, I'll get it.
well, what I have figured out is the chat ends right after the Zoom ends, right? And just text a keyword wealth ministry so I know where I met you.
All right. Thank you. I got it.
All right. Other questions, other questions, other questions?
I'm having technical. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome, because I was having technical difficulties again. So Richard, you were talking about the debt snowball. One of the things that a lot of people focus on is paying off, revolving debt. What about things like paying off your car? Your house?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a sequence. So if you think about the way that we typically prioritize the debt snowball, it is paying off everything but the house first, but then using all the payments that we were using for those other things to speed up the house payment. See, you gotta imagine, it's one of those blessings that thanks to our process, I was actually able to pay off my first rental property, the one that I talked about at the beginning of this, last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm finally having that experience of actual home ownership where it's like, oh, this is mine. I'm not managing this for the mortgage company anymore. And that increases cash flow, right? Because it is one of those things where you start off retail first. So here's your prioritization thumbnail. And I would suggest using a calculator or a debt elimination software like the partnership that we have offers. But what it'll take into consideration first is any double-digit revolving debt that you have, that needs to get out of your life immediately. Because what it essentially means is whatever you bought for that amount of money, you bought two of them. And I don't know where that other car or set of clothes went, but we just need to get that coming back to our house. That makes sense? Same thing with our cars, even though, one of the you got to really think about this. And this is something that's come to me over time. Once your credit score gets to be pretty solid, you can get a good interest rate on a car. But even with a good interest rate, there's still thousands of dollars that you're paying in interest that you could divert to another car. So the car I bought last year, I put it into our debt calculator and it became public enemy number 2. I went from 60 months to paying that car off in 4 months. And again, nothing like knowing at least this thing I don't owe. If something happens to it, I've got some other things that I can take care of and an emergency fund. But that process of getting the cash flow back into your life so that you have breathing room, because that's the other thing that makes it difficult to invest. It's hard to park some money for a year if you think you might need to reach in next month. Can anybody relate? Is that just me?
Of course.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. Any other questions? because I'll ask questions until our time is up. Y'all know I will. Don't be shy. Going once, going twice.
I have a question. This is Tina.
Hey, Tina, I ain't seen you since back in 72. Where's your camera?
I know.
Come on.
You don't want to see me today.
Oh.
No.
How are
So
you?
I'm good. Hey, quick question. So what about 401ks and money that that I'm investing for retirement?
It's good. I mean, I'll say this. Now, it's good and it's in categories. One of the things that I love, for example, about the private reserve account is liquid while I'm building, meaning I started investing in my 401k at age 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was steady, I was consistent, even at times where if I look back or I had had a better financial advisor, it probably would have been a better idea to cut back on the percentage I was putting into my 401k until I knocked those credit cards out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The good news is that by the time I got to into my 40s, there was a significant amount of money there. And then I had one of those situations in my life where my job left me. And, you with me? So for a
Right.
couple of months, we were having to borrow from the 401k. And when I tell you, Tina, they tax me like that is not my money.
Yes.
Mhm.
Been there, done that.
It's saving my whole life, right? But any of the money that you take out of a 401k before 59 and a half, that ends up being some of the highest tax, highest penalized money.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yep, that's true.
And so
Right.
one of the things that I enjoy about the private reserve account, even though I'm putting after tax money into it, I do have that ability to borrow from it and set my own terms of repayment. And the
Right.
way that it behaves, it still earns money like all of
Exactly.
the money was in there.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
if I had known then what I know now, Uncle Rick would have paid for college instead of Auntie Sally Mae.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did in some situations. Rather than taking out a personal loan, I just took a loan against my 401k and paid myself back.
Yeah. So what I'll say about a 401k, it's good, but for people, I mean, I tell people out there, you do need to diversify. Unfortunately, when a company like Fidelity, so Fidelity has the most zeros and commas of my money. Does that make sense? That's what my 401k is and my IRA, right? The challenge is you can only get paper assets there. So it still kind of rides the stock market in terms of its ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
And the older we get, the less time we have for downs to recover.
Right.
Right.
True.
So again, that's one of the reasons I offset some of what I have invested in my retirement accounts in the stock market. I also have something called land banking, where I do have some retirement assets that are actually invested in real estate in the path of growth. And my rental properties are part of our real estate portfolio. Best thing about them is that real estate is downward price inflexible. Prices tend to go up and they ride inflation. So it makes what you have relatively inflation proof. Am I making sense? Inflation goes at about 4% a year, meaning the value of a dollar goes down about that much. So if you had a dollar yesterday, it's 95 cents.
Mm-hmm.
But real estate gives us, gives me a way to have something that is a paper asset, something that I know somebody's gonna always need a place to live.
Right.
That's why I want to invest in more of it. There's a question for you, Richard. What do you do if you don't have wiggle room with a current income to make possible to do a mini emergency or savings?
Quit something. I mean, what I do say is start figuring out how to make wiggle room. Now, here's the thing that most people don't know. For most people that are working, there's wiggle room in your paycheck at your job. According to the IRS, about 80% of people are overpaying their taxes through payroll deductions. And you can tell that has happened if you get a tax refund. That means that the government was holding on to a significant amount of your money all year. As a matter of fact, when I started my financial makeover, that was my first stop. The experts reviewed my tax situation, what I was paying, what they were taking out, and they sent me an adjusted W-4 that actually increased my take-home pay from work by $636 a pay period. I get paid twice a month, so that was $1,000 that I was giving the IRS to hold on for me until I filled out paperwork the right way. But here's what happens. Most people don't think of this. The paperwork that you signed the first day that you started work, unless you adjust it when your situation changes, and the instructions say adjust it every year when your situation changes, unless you make the adjustment, they're not going to do it for you. They won't tell you that you got a math error. That's one way. Second thing I start talking about is think about things that for a time you can release. We talk about creating margin, like if I look at my life right now, I have to question myself sometimes, should I still have the cable package that I have?
No.
Right. You got real cable.
It's like, I got all the HBOs, but what's the last time I really went and watched something? I haven't watched something on HBO since Game of Thrones in terms of the time that it comes on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So start thinking about little creative ways that you can do things. And you can always make some more money. Add a home business to your portfolio. I endorse it fully. John might not do it, but you can. And we got ways we can help with that. Does that help?
Sure.
Oh, and that's the other thing. I don't know if all of your bank accounts have it, but now there's this watch center where you can look at things that are auto debited from your account.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you, every 6 months to a year, audit what things either through in-app purchases, that little $12.99 or $19.99 or $1.99, those things add up. And I had literally $75 worth of things that I clicked the button at some point. I had to look back at that thing, but they were still steady taking the money.
Mm-hmm. Why did Netflix go up $1? That made me mad. But anyway, that's just another story.
You know why? Because they can.
Because
It's the only reason.
Exactly. I'm like, wait, you were $14.99. When did you go to $15.99? Nobody told me that.
No, imagine there was a time. I know when we first got on Netflix, it was $7.99.
Yeah,
Right?
it was $7.99.
But that's a good example of inflation. And when I talk about inflation, it is that businesses control the price of things. It's just that most people don't control their income. So a business can go up on their price to the point that people stop using them. So Netflix, they didn't go from $7.90 because ours was $30.97. I just saw it hit my account the other day, but they didn't go from $7.99 to $31 in a year. They did it over the course of years, just $1 here and there, and we continue to pay for access.
Right. Yeah.
True.
Also, something you should do if you've got good payment history with your credit cards, about every quarter, call them, ask them to lower your interest rate.
Yeah, I just did that. And,
Right,
and increase your available credit, because available credit also, your debt to income looks a lot better on paper, and it'll increase your credit score. So every 3 months, that's a good practice. I actually just did that last week.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't cost you anymore. So I'm not saying apply for new credit. If you're paying them, just ask them, can you increase my credit limit? I think I went up another $4,000 and down another 2 points just because I asked, but that's in the book, right? If you look, you'll find. If you'll knock, the door will be open. But if you don't ask,
you don't get anything.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let the
Richard,
ask question.
Was that
okay,
Winnie
Rich, I do
or
have a
Veronica?
question.
Okay.
This is Winnie. I joined in kind of late, driving in, but I do have a question concerning the credit card. If we already have paid off the credit card, should we still go in and ask for an increase on the credit card?
Especially then.
Yes, do not close it. It will negatively impact your credit.
Right.
Right.
So keep it open.
Uh-huh.
And as long as you're current with them, they don't have any reason not to extend you more credit. And the worst that can happen is limit stays the same.
Yeah. And I put on my credit cards, I put small incremental things on it. Like I have $3.99 coming out from $2.99 coming out from my, what's that? My iTunes account, you know what I'm saying? And I pay that off every month, right? It's on auto pay. So that stuff keeps your credit current, but you know, the utilization remains very low.
Right. That's something else you can put in your notes. A bank is a place that will loan you as much money as you want if you don't look like you need it.
Yeah.
That's for
Okay,
sure.
okay.
All right.
So that I would yet still ask for them to decrease the
Interest rate.
interest rate.
Yeah.
Ask,
Yep.
ask them, can you decrease my interest rate? Can you increase my credit limit?
Okay.
And they have a certain level that they can do it. The person that answers the phone, the first one can, without running another inquiry against your credit. So they don't actually have to run your credit to increase your credit limit, especially if you're on good terms with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they can do a soft inquiry, or you can do it online with some banks. With a couple of my credit cards, I just went online. I just requested an increase. And then if you call them, when you call them to ask for the decrease, they may have some promotional rates. So like I got a couple promotional rates that takes me down to like 0% interest for the next 9 months or whatever. So take advantage of that as much as you can, because that way it actually boosts your credit score that way tremendously. And a lot of people make the worst mistake. They close credit cards. That is the worst thing that you can do. Do not close your credit cards.
What you do, you put it in a Ziploc bag
In some ice, water,
with some water
and leave it
in the freezer.
Hmm.
That'll work for
That
me.
way, you can get access to it if you need it, but you think through it before you just be swiping all willy-nilly.
Yeah. All right.
All right, good stuff. Good questions. Good questions. Anything else?
Hey, you asked a question. So what are you guys most interested in? We want to, Rich, there's several topics. I know investment strategies is one of them that we had a lot of questions on the last time. We will make our next month's session probably based on investment strategies. If you know someone that is interested in it, we will have the experts on here to help provide you some information on that. So we look forward to providing this value-added session to you. We want to build wealth, because the good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And we definitely want to leave not just a spiritual inheritance, but also a financial one. So let's start building wealth and leave generational wealth to the next generations. If that's all that we have today, I want to thank Richard.
I'm sorry. I do have another question. I'm sorry. Yes.
Mhm.
I can share. I was coming up on the end, but you were speaking of Richard about the emergency money. Even though you have some over in your 401k and your emergency money, where did you keep that?
So up until I got the private reserve account, I was keeping my emergency fund in a credit union.
Okay.
Without overdraft to my regular checking and savings account at the bank. Is it, I mean, in the easiest way, this is something that I adhere to, is make it automatic. So I automatically, just out of my net, have 10% go to that account over there. So it's not like the check that I experience is any different, but when it's time to take care of something, there's something there, and it keeps me from, because it's a really big sacrifice. Like, I know because of the way that they're sold and packaged, we're taught to think of our 401k as for emergency, but it's really for our after 59 and a half. Until then, it's actually more expensive. It's one of the most expensive places to get money, even though it's ours.
True.
Now, once you're 59 and a half, you got lots of things, because it can't do the two things at once. If you borrow money from the 401k, or if you make a withdrawal, the portion that you've taken out, it stops earning at the market rates. That makes sense? And that's not what an investment is supposed to be there to grow. So we do want to be able, the emergency fund puts you in a position where you can really leave that money alone and let it grow.
Even in the credit union.
Even in the credit union. Meaning, I make sure I'm saying this right. The emergency fund, you need that in a cash equivalent. So meaning I can, even though it's in the credit union and there's not an ATM for my credit union here, I know I can, in an emergency, within 24 hours, I can get some money from over there to over here.
Right, okay.
Right. And that's kind of the place you want to have it, where it's there that you have the confidence that you can continue your process and your lifestyle, and it doesn't create a panic situation for you when something big happens from a job point of view.
Okay.
And that, by the way, that's another one of those aspects and thought processes for investors. In terms of our risk tolerance, it's a lot easier to leave your investments alone if you know that you've got more than enough to take care of what's happening here, and you're braced for emergencies on the other side. So it is, you notice my foundation structure is defense first. Is get the house in order, plug up the leaks, don't let the banks and credit cards keep bleeding the wealth out of your bathtub. But then as you start to build, make sure that if you ever have to dip into it, your next investment check is probably back to rebuilding that emergency fund.
Okay.
Like,
All right, thank you.
All
oh, my
right.
pleasure.
Well, guys, we will have another session next month. You will look forward for information. Hopefully this was helpful to you. If you guys need, and all of you have my phone number, if you would like to reach Richard in any way, his number is in the chat. Also, if you did not catch it in the chat, I can also send it to you directly. Richard, thank you again for the valuable information you provide today. You're always, didn't I tell you guys, he is super smart. Sometimes I'll be like, oh my gosh, he just made my
Yes, he is.
listening to him speak. But he is, I always like to surround myself with people smarter than I am, because I believe that I get smarter that way. So I'm very grateful and very humbled that you have taken the time out of your busy schedule. And y'all, he is super busy. He is traveling worldwide. I'm telling you, he'll be on a plane somewhere soon.
Man, I
But
couldn't wait for outside to open back up. It's going, and like this whole beard, this whole beard is a 2020 addition. We were goatees before, but it's like, let it go, let it go.
I see. But yeah, he is super busy.
Yeah.
I appreciate him taking the time out of his day to kind of share this information with us today. So if you would just a virtual round of applause for Richard. We are going to end this call very succinctly and say thank you to him.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. Y'all have an awesome day, evening. Thank you again.
All right, thank
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.